I signed the papers with shaking hands. My house, my retirement, everything I'd worked 40 years to build. I told myself it was an investment in our future, in her dream, in us. But the day the business sold, she changed her number, cleared the account, and disappeared like I'd never existed. I'm 62 years old, and I just gave a 31-year-old woman everything I had. And now I'm standing in an empty apartment in a country that isn't mine, wondering how I became this stupid. I'm standing in this small, empty space in Parañaque, and Christine is moving around like she owns the place already. Her eyes are lit up in a way I've never seen before. She's holding a crumpled napkin, sketching something with a borrowed pen, and I can barely keep up with what she's saying. Right here, Randall, we'll have the counter. Marble top, maybe white with gold veins. And over there, big windows, so much natural light. People will take photos here. It'll be Instagram perfect. She looks at me and smiles, and I feel my chest tighten. I've only known her 4 months. 4 months. But right now, watching her dream out loud, it feels like I've known her my whole life. You really think this could work? I ask her, and she stops moving. She walks over to me and takes both my hands. Her hands are small and warm. Randall, this isn't just a cafe. This is everything I've ever wanted. My whole life, I've worked for other people, other people's dreams, other people's success. This would be mine. Ours. She squeezes my hands tighter. I just need someone who believes in me. Just one person who sees what I see. I look around the space. It's hot. There's no air conditioning yet. The floors are stained concrete. The walls need paint. But I see what she sees. Or maybe I just see her. I believe in you, I tell her, and her eyes water up. She hugs me tight, and I smell her hair, that coconut shampoo she always uses. Thank you, she whispers. Thank you for seeing me. We spend the next hour talking about her vision. She wants to import specialty coffee beans from Benguet. She's talking about ube lattes and pandan cakes and these little desserts she calls bibinka cheesecake. Tourists will love it, she says, but locals too. It has to be for everyone. She pulls out her phone and shows me photos she's saved. Pastel pink walls, hanging plants, cute wooden chairs. This is the vibe, she says. Cozy but modern, traditional but fresh. How much would something like this cost? I ask, trying to sound practical. She bites her lip. To start, maybe $15,000. For the lease, the equipment, the initial inventory, permits. She sees my face and quickly adds, but I've been saving. I have almost half. I just need a little more time. I don't tell her that I have money. Not yet. I want to, but something tells me to wait. Back in Detroit, nobody needed me. My ex-wife didn't need me. My kids grew up and moved away and didn't need me. The plant laid me off early and definitely didn't need me. But here, in this empty space in a country I barely know, this beautiful woman is talking about dreams and coffee beans and Instagram photos, and she's looking at me like I matter. You really think you can do this? I ask again. She nods, and there's no hesitation. With the right partner, yes. With someone who believes in me, absolutely. She reaches across the space between us and touches my arm. You make me feel like I can do anything, Randall. I've never felt that before. We leave the space and walk outside into the heat. The street smells like grilled meat and car exhaust. A jeepney rattles past, packed with people. Christine takes my hand as we walk, and I feel like a kid again. Like anything is possible. Let's get some halo, she says, pulling me toward a small shop. My treat. To celebrate. Celebrate what? I ask. She turns and looks at me with those dark eyes. Celebrate us. Celebrate dreams. Celebrate finding someone who finally gets me. And right there, on a crowded street in Parañaque, with sweat running down my back and horns honking all around us, I realize I'm completely and totally in love with her. I'd give her anything. I'd do anything. And maybe that's where I made my first mistake. Maybe that's where this whole thing started falling apart. I need to go back. I need to explain how we even met, because none of this makes sense without that part. It was February, almost exactly a year ago. I was sitting in my house in Detroit, the house I'd lived in for 32 years, and I was scrolling through my phone. I downloaded this language exchange app on a whim. One of those things where you're supposed to practice English with someone who speaks another language. I wasn't really serious about it. I was just lonely. And then I saw her profile. Christine, 31 years old, marketing consultant from Manila. Her profile picture showed her standing in front of a sunset, the sky all orange and pink behind her, and she was smiling like she didn't have a care in the world. Her bio said, "I want to improve my English and learn about American culture. I love coffee, business, and deep conversations." I sent her a message. I don't even remember what I said. Something simple, probably stupid. But she responded within an hour. "Hi, Randall. Nice to meet you. Tell me about Detroit. I've never been to America, but I dream about it." We started chatting that night, and we didn't stop. For 3 months, we talked every single day. Sometimes just messages, sometimes voice calls, a few times video calls, though my internet was terrible and the connection kept dropping. She asked me everything, about my job at the plant, about my divorce, about my kids, about what I did all day now that I was retired. "That sounds lonely," she said once, and I'd laughed it off. But she was right. It was lonely. She told me about her life too. Growing up in Parañaque with her mom and younger sister Maricel, her dad left when she was 12. She worked her way through college, got a degree in business administration, started freelancing as a social media manager for small companies. "I'm good at what I do," she said, "but I want more. I want to build something that's mine." One night, 3 months in, I said something I'd been thinking about for weeks. "I want to meet you, in person." There was a long pause. Then she typed, "Are you serious?" I told her I was. She sent back a string of exclamation points and a voice message where she was almost crying. Nobody has ever wanted to meet me before. I mean, I've done language exchange with other people, but they never wanted to actually meet. "Randall, are you really serious?" I booked the flight the next day. 2 weeks later, I was standing in Ninoy Aquino International Airport at 1 a.m, exhausted and disoriented and sweating through my shirt, and there she was, holding a handmade sign that said, "Welcome, Randall," with little hearts drawn around my name. She was even more beautiful in person. Smaller than I expected. She barely came up to my shoulder. But when she hugged me, she held on tight, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. I felt wanted. That first week was perfect. She took me everywhere. We rode jeepneys through Metro Manila. We ate street food from vendors she'd known since childhood. She brought me to her neighborhood and showed me the small apartment she shared with Maricel. "This is where I grew up," she said, pointing at a narrow alley. "We didn't have much, but we were happy." Maricel was shy. She was 28 but seemed younger. She smiled when Christine introduced us but barely said 2 words. "She's always been quiet," Christine explained later. "But she likes you. I can tell." I wasn't sure how she could tell, but I believed her. Christine showed me Rizal Park and Intramuros and Mall of Asia. We took a day trip to Tagaytay and looked out over Taal Volcano. "It's beautiful here," I said, and she leaned against me. "It is, but I always thought it would be more beautiful with someone to share it with." She looked up at me. "Thank you for coming, Randall. Thank you for being real." When it was time for me to leave, we both cried at the airport. I'm not a guy who cries. I didn't cry at my wedding. I didn't cry at my divorce. I barely cried when my dad died. But standing there in the departure area, holding Christine while she sobbed into my chest, I cried like a child. "I don't want you to go," she kept saying. "I don't want this to end." "It's not ending," I promised her. "I'll come back. I swear I'll come back." She pulled away and looked at me, her face all red and wet. "Promise?" I kissed her forehead. "I promise." I was back in the Philippines 2 months later. This time, I didn't book a hotel. Christine said I could stay with her and Maricel. The apartment was tiny, but it was home. We fell into a routine. I'd wake up to her making coffee. We'd spend the day exploring or just sitting together while she worked on her laptop. At night, we'd lie in her small bed and talk about everything and nothing. "What if you just stayed?" she asked me one night. We were lying in the dark, and I could hear Maricel moving around in the other room. "What do you mean?" I asked. Christine turned to face me. "What if you didn't go back to Detroit? What if you stayed here? With me?" My heart was pounding. "You want me to move here?" She nodded. "I know it's crazy. We've only really known each other for a few months. But Randall, I've never felt this way about anyone, and I think you feel it too." She was right. I did feel it. I felt more alive in her tiny apartment in Parañaque than I'd felt in 30 years in Detroit. So 2 weeks later, when I flew back to the States, I started making plans. I applied for a long-term visa. I sold most of my furniture. I told my kids I was going to spend some extended time abroad. They barely reacted. My son said, "Cool, Dad," like I'd told him I was going to the grocery store. My daughter said, "Be careful," in that tone that meant she thought I was making a mistake but wasn't going to argue about it. Dale was the only one who pushed back. Dale had worked with me at the plant for 26 years. We'd been through strikes and layoffs and bad winters together. "Randy, you barely know this girl," he said when I told him over beers. "I know her," I said. He shook his head. "You know what she's told you. That's different." But I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want anyone ruining this for me. 3 months later, I moved to the Philippines. Christine picked me up at the airport again, but this time there was no return ticket in my pocket. This time, I was staying. "Welcome home," she said, and I believed her. This was home now. She was home. And I was finally, exactly where I was supposed to be. We'd been living together for about a month when things started to shift, not in a bad way, just different, more real. We weren't in that honeymoon phase anymore, where everything was perfect. We had routines now. Bills. Little arguments about stupid things like whose turn it was to buy rice or whether we should eat out or cook at home. One night, we were lying in bed, and Christine was unusually quiet. I was scrolling through my phone, checking the news back home, when I noticed she was just staring at the ceiling. "You okay?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. Then she sighed, this deep, sad sigh. "I've been thinking about the café again." We'd talked about it a few times since that first day in the empty space. She'd even taken me back there once to show me that someone else had rented it. "See?" she'd said. "I missed my chance." I'd told her there would be other spaces, other chances, but she just nodded, not really believing me. "What about it?" I asked, putting my phone down. She rolled onto her side to face me. Her eyes looked wet. "I've been saving for 2 years, Randall. 2 years. Every extra peso I make, I put it aside. But it's not enough. It's never enough." Her voice cracked. "The landlord for that space I showed you, he wants 6 months' rent up front, plus deposit, plus all the equipment. The espresso machine alone is 300,000 pesos. I did the math. I'm not even halfway there. And by the time I get there, the opportunity will be gone. Someone else will do it. Someone else will have my dream." I felt my chest tighten. I hated seeing her like this, defeated. "How much do you need?" I asked. She shook her head quickly. No, Randall, I'm not asking you for money. That's not what this is." She sat up, pulling the blanket around her. "I would never do that. I just needed to talk about it, to tell someone. Because it's been eating at me, but I could see it, the defeat, the sadness. This woman who'd been so full of life and energy, who'd shown me around her entire city with pride, who talked about the future like it was something bright and certain, was now curling in on herself because of money, because of something I could actually fix. "What if I helped?" I said. She looked at me. "Randall, no." I sat up too. "Why not? I have savings. I'm retired. I'm not using it for anything." She was shaking her head. "I can't take your money. That's not right." I reached for her hand. "It's not taking. It's investing. In us. In our future." She pulled her hand away and stood up. She walked to the window, her back to me. "You don't understand. I've worked so hard to be independent. To not need anyone. If I take money from you, what does that make me?" Her voice was shaking. "It makes me like every other girl in this country who foreign men think they can buy." Those words hit me hard. I don't think that, I said. Christine, I don't think that at all. She turned around and she was crying now. Then why would you offer? I got out of bed and walked to her. Because I love you. Because I want to see you happy. Because for the first time in my life, I have the chance to actually help someone I care about achieve something that matters to them. She looked down. How much do you have saved? I did the mental math. About $60,000 in my retirement account, another 20 in checking. She looked up, surprised. That's a lot of money, I shrugged. 40 years of working will do that. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, in almost a whisper, I need $8,000. That would cover the deposit, first 6 months' rent, and the basic equipment. I could do the rest slowly, build it as I go. She looked at me. But Randall, I can't just take that from you. You're not taking it, I said. I'm giving it. There's a difference. She shook her head. I'll pay you back. Every cent. I don't know how long it'll take, but I will. I pulled her close. You don't have to. She was crying harder now. Yes, I do. I have to, because I need to know that I earned this. That I didn't just get it because I'm sleeping with an American man. That stung, but I understood it. I could see where she was coming from. Okay, I said. Okay, you'll pay me back. But Christine, I'm doing this because I believe in you. Because I see how hard you work. Because I know you're going to make this cafe amazing. She hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. Thank you, she kept saying. Thank you, thank you, thank you. The next morning, I transferred $8,000 to her bank account. She cried when the notification came through on her phone. I can't believe this is real, she said. I can't believe you're real. For the next week, she was like a different person, energized, focused. She contacted the landlord, signed the lease, started ordering equipment. She made spreadsheets and schedules and business plans. She asked for my opinion on everything: paint colors, menu items, logo designs. I'd never seen anyone work so hard. I'll pay you back, she said one night as we were falling asleep. I promise, Randall. As soon as the cafe starts making money. I kissed her forehead. I'm not worried about it. And I wasn't. Because this wasn't about money. This was about love. This was about partnership. This was about building something together. I should have been worried. I should have asked more questions. I should have paid attention to the fact that her name was on everything. The lease, the business registration, the bank account. But I didn't, because I trusted her, because I loved her, because I wanted so badly to believe that I'd finally found someone who needed me the way I needed her. The next 2 months felt like a hurricane, not a destructive one, the opposite, the kind that sweeps through and changes everything and leaves you dizzy but alive. Christine was everywhere at once. Messaging suppliers at 6 a.m, meeting with contractors at noon, posting mock-ups on her Instagram at midnight. I'd wake up and she'd already be dressed and out the door. Meeting with the furniture guy, she'd say, kissing me quickly. I'll be back by lunch. Sometimes she'd be back by lunch. Sometimes I wouldn't see her until dinner. I didn't mind. This was her dream, and I was watching it come to life. The empty space in Parañaque started transforming. First the walls, painted this soft cream color that Christine said would photograph well. Then the floors, redone in light wood laminate that looked expensive but wasn't. We have to be smart about costs, she kept saying. Every peso counts. I went with her to pick out the espresso machine, this massive chrome thing that cost more than my first car. Is it worth it? I asked, and the supplier, this middle-aged Filipino guy with tired eyes, nodded. Sir, you want customers to come back. You need good equipment. This machine, Italian-made, it'll last 20 years. Christine was running her hands over it like it was made of gold. This is the one, she said. This is perfect. We bought it, along with 2 grinders, a commercial fridge, a display case for the pastries, and about 1,000 smaller things I didn't even know a cafe needed. Syrups, cups, spoons, napkins with the logo she'd designed printed on them. Every detail matters, she kept saying. I was learning that about her. She cared about details I'd never notice. That's when she introduced me to Tito Ben. We were at City Hall, dealing with some business permit thing that I didn't fully understand. The office was crowded and hot, and I was starting to feel overwhelmed when this older Filipino man walked up. "Christine," he said, smiling wide. "There's my favorite niece." Christine hugged him. "Tito Ben, this is Randall, my partner." She said it with pride. "My partner." Tito Ben shook my hand. His grip was firm. "American, ah? Good, good. Welcome to the Philippines, sir." He was probably mid-50s, dressed in a barong, the traditional shirt that Filipino men wear to look formal. Something about him immediately felt off to me, but I couldn't put my finger on what. "Tito Ben is helping me with all the paperwork," Christine explained. "Government stuff is so complicated here. Without him, I'd be lost." Tito Ben waved his hand. "Ah, it's nothing. Family helps family." But he wasn't really her uncle. I'd learned that Tito just meant uncle, and Filipinos called lots of older men that out of respect. "How do you know each other?" I asked. "Ben is my mother's cousin," Christine said. "He used to work at City Hall, so he knows everyone. He's been so helpful." Tito Ben smiled at me, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Anything for Christine. She's a good girl, very smart. This café, it's going to be very successful." He looked at me. "You're investing?" I nodded. "I'm helping where I can." "Very good," he said. "Very good. Christine is lucky to have a partner like you." The word partner sounded strange coming from him, like he meant something different than what I meant. But Christine was pulling me toward the counter, and the moment passed. Over the next few weeks, Tito Ben was around a lot, always showing up when we needed to file something or get a signature or deal with some government requirement. "He's been so helpful," Christine kept saying, and he had been. But I didn't like him. Maybe it was the way he looked at Christine, or the way he looked at me, like he was sizing me up, like he knew something I didn't. "Is he charging you?" I asked Christine one night. She looked confused. "Charging me for what?" I shrugged. "For all this help. He's spending a lot of time on your business." She laughed. "No, of course not. He's family. He'd never charge family. But I wasn't family, and I wondered if that mattered to him." The cafe was taking shape. The furniture arrived. These cute wooden chairs with white cushions, small round tables, a long communal table by the window, plants hanging from the ceiling, fairy lights strung along the walls. Christine posted photos every step of the way. "Coming soon," she'd write. "Something beautiful is being born." Her followers were growing. Hundreds, then thousands of people watching her build this thing. "You're going viral," I told her, looking at her phone. She was glowing. "People love a good story. Girl from Parañaque, building her dream. It's relatable." She looked at me. "And having you here, supporting me, that makes it even better. People love that too." I'd wired another $12,000 by then, for inventory mostly, coffee beans from Benguet, specialty teas, ingredients for the cakes and pastries Christine was planning to make herself. "I learned from my Lola," she said. "My grandmother. She was the best baker in our barangay. I loved watching her talk about food. Her eyes lit up the same way they did when she talked about the cafe." We hired 2 staff members. Young girls, maybe 21 or 22. Christine knew them from her neighborhood. "They need the work," she said, "and I need people I can trust." She trained them herself. How to make the drinks, how to talk to customers, how to keep the place clean. She was a good boss, firm but fair. I was proud of her. One night, about a week before the opening, Christine sat me down. She looked serious. "Randall, I need to talk to you about something." My stomach tightened. "Okay." She took my hand. "You know all the business registration, the permits, everything is in my name, right?" I nodded. I did know that. That's because it's easier that way. Foreign ownership rules here are complicated. If your name was on it, we'd need all kinds of extra paperwork. "I understand," I said, and I did, or I thought I did. She squeezed my hand. "But I want you to know, this is ours. You're my partner, in everything. The cafe, my life, everything. I just wanted to make sure you know that." I kissed her. I know that. I've never doubted it. She smiled, but there was something in her eyes I couldn't read. Good, because you've given me everything, Randall. Your support, your belief, your money. I'm going to make this work. I'm going to make you proud. She was crying a little. You already have, I told her. The cafe opened on a Saturday. It was beautiful. Christine had worked 16-hour days that whole week to get it perfect. Fresh flowers on every table, the smell of cinnamon and coffee filling the space, music playing softly in the background. She'd invited everyone she knew, her friends, her family, people from the neighborhood, her followers from Instagram. Maricel was there, standing awkwardly in the corner. I tried to talk to her. It's beautiful, isn't it? She nodded, but didn't really look at me. Christine worked very hard. That was all she said before walking away. I still couldn't figure that girl out. But Christine was radiant, floating around the cafe in a yellow dress, greeting everyone, taking photos, making drinks. People kept telling her how amazing it was, how proud they were, how they knew she'd succeed. None of this would be possible without Randall, she kept saying, pulling me into photos. He believed in me when nobody else did. That night, after everyone left and the staff had cleaned up, Christine and I sat alone at one of the tables. She was exhausted. Her makeup was smudged. Her hair was falling out of the bun she'd put it in, but she was smiling. We did it, she said. We really did it. I corrected her gently. You did it. She shook her head. No, we. This is as much yours as it is mine. She looked around the cafe. This is our future, Randall. Our life together. Starting right here. I believed her. God, I wanted to believe her so badly. And for a while, I did. Christine came home one evening about 3 months after the cafe opened, and I knew immediately something was wrong. Her face was pale. She barely said hello. Just dropped her bag by the door and sat down on the couch, staring at nothing. What happened? I asked, sitting next to her. She didn't answer right away, just kept staring. Christine, talk to me. She finally looked at me, and her eyes were red like she'd been crying. The landlord is selling the building. I didn't understand at first. Okay. So? She laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. So, Randall, we're renting. If he sells, the new owner might not renew our lease. They might want the space for something else. They might triple the rent. We could lose everything. My stomach dropped. Can he do that? She nodded. It's in the contract. He has to give us 60 days notice. But yes, he can do that. She put her head in her hands. I knew this was too good to be true. I knew we should have bought the space from the beginning. How much would it cost to buy? I asked. She looked up. To buy the commercial unit? He's asking $85,000. The number hit me like a punch. $85,000. I didn't have that kind of cash lying around. My retirement account, sure, but that was supposed to last me the rest of my life. There has to be another option, I said. What about finding a different space? Starting over somewhere else? She stood up, agitated. Randall, we just spent months building this. The customers know where we are. Our reputation is tied to this location. If we move, we start from zero. All that money you invested, all that work, it's gone. She was pacing now. I could try to get a business loan, but no bank is going to give me $85,000. I don't have collateral. I don't have a long business history. We've been open 3 months. She stopped and looked at me. Unless. I knew what she was going to say before she said it. Unless what? She sat back down, taking my hands. Unless you co-sign. Or unless we use something you own as collateral. My mouth went dry. Christine, I don't own anything here. Everything I have is back in Detroit. Your house, she said quietly. You still own your house. I pulled my hands away. I can't mortgage my house. That's my safety net. That's all I have left, she nodded quickly. I know. I'm not asking you to. I'm just thinking out loud. But the seed was planted. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed doing math in my head. The house was worth about $200,000. It was paid off, completely mine. If I remortgaged it, I could pull out $85,000, maybe more. The payments would be manageable. And this wasn't just Christine's business anymore. It was ours, our future, our investment. The next morning I called Dale. It was late night in Detroit, but he picked up. "Randy, you okay?" I told him about the situation, about the landlord selling, about the $85,000, and then I told him what I was thinking. The silence on the other end went on so long I thought the call had dropped. "Dale?" he sighed, this deep, exhausted sigh. "Randy, please tell me you're joking." I wasn't joking. "I know how it sounds." He cut me off. "Do you? Because it sounds like you're about to mortgage your home for a woman you've known 6 months, for a business in a foreign country where you have no legal rights." "She's not just some woman," I said, defensive. "She's my partner. We're building a life together." Dale's voice got harder. "Randy, I love you like a brother. You know that. But you're being an idiot. Don't do this." I felt anger rising in my chest. "You don't understand. You're not here. You don't see what we have." "What you have," he said. "Randy, what do you have? A girlfriend half your age who keeps asking you for money? That's what you have." That stung. "She's not asking me. I'm offering. There's a difference." He laughed bitterly. "Is there? Because from here, it looks the same." I hung up on him. I was shaking. Who was he to judge? He'd been married to the same woman for 30 years. He had kids who visited on holidays. He had a life. What did I have before Christine? Nothing. Nobody. An empty house and TV dinners and days that all felt the same. I called the bank in Detroit. Started the remortgage process. It took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of paperwork and phone calls and waiting. Christine knew what I was doing. I'd told her that second night. "Randall, are you sure?" she'd asked. "I don't want you to lose your house." But her eyes said something different. Her eyes said, "Please do this. Please save us." "I'm sure," I'd told her. "This is an investment in our future, in us." She'd cried and held me. "You're the best man I've ever known. Nobody has ever believed in me like you do." Those words kept me going through the whole process, even when doubt crept in, even when I'd wake up at 3 a.m. in a cold sweat, wondering what I was doing. The day the money came through, Christine was at the café. I called her. "It's done. The funds are in my account." She screamed. Actually screamed. "Randall, oh my God, are you serious?" I couldn't help but smile. Her joy was infectious. "I'm serious. We can make the offer." She came home 2 hours later and jumped into my arms. "You saved us," she kept saying. "You saved everything." That night we celebrated. She cooked this elaborate meal. Adobo and pancit and lumpia. We drank wine. We made love. And lying there afterwards, she whispered, "I'm going to spend the rest of my life making this up to you. I promise, Randall. I'll never forget what you've done." I kissed her forehead. "You don't have to make it up to me. We're partners. Your success is my success." She smiled and snuggled closer. "I love you so much." It was the first time she'd said those words. I'd said them dozens of times, but this was the first time she'd said them back. "I love you too," I said. The purchase went through 2 weeks later. Tito Ben handled most of the paperwork again. Very good," he kept saying. "Now the business is secure. Now you can really grow." The property was in Christine's name. Just like the business registration. "It's easier this way," she explained. "Trust me." And I did trust her. Even when Dale stopped returning my calls. Even when my daughter sent me a short email that just said, "Dad, please be careful." Even when I looked at my bank statements and saw how little was left, I trusted her. Because I loved her. Because I needed to believe that this time, this relationship, this life, was going to work out differently than everything else had. The cafe was doing well. At least, that's what Christine told me. She'd post photos every day, full tables, happy customers, beautiful drinks with latte art. Her Instagram followers were up to 15,000. "We're becoming a destination," she'd say. "People are coming from all over Metro Manila." But I wasn't seeing her as much anymore. She'd leave early, before I woke up. She'd come home late, after I'd already eaten dinner. "The business needs me," she'd say when I asked her to spend more time at home. This is the critical period. I have to be there. I'd go to the cafe sometimes, just to see her, to feel like I was part of what we'd built, but she'd barely acknowledge me. Not now, Randall, she'd say, rushing past with a tray of drinks. I'm working. The staff would smile at me politely, but I could tell they didn't really know who I was. I was just some old white guy who showed up sometimes. The sex stopped. We'd gone from making love almost every night to maybe once every 2 weeks, and when we did, it felt mechanical, like she was doing it out of obligation. I'm just tired, she'd say when I tried to initiate. Running a business is exhausting. I tried to be understanding. I tried to give her space, but I was lonely. I was living in a foreign country where I barely spoke the language. My only connection was Christine, and Christine was becoming a stranger. One night, I asked to see the books. We were eating dinner, one of the rare nights she was home before 9. The books? She said, her fork pausing halfway to her mouth. Yeah, the financial records. I'd like to see how we're doing. She put her fork down. Why? I shrugged, trying to sound casual. I invested a lot of money. I just want to see how things are going. Her face changed. Got hard in a way I hadn't seen before. You don't trust me? I reached for her hand. Of course I trust you. I just want to understand the business better. She pulled her hand away. Randall, you don't know anything about running a cafe. You'd just get confused looking at the numbers. That stung. I worked in operations management for 40 years. I think I can read a profit and loss statement. She stood up. This is my business. I handle the finances. That's how it works. Our business, I corrected. I thought we were partners. She laughed, but it wasn't warm. Partners? Randall, your name isn't on anything. The lease is mine. The business registration is mine. The property is mine. You gave me money, yes, and I'm grateful. But that doesn't make you a partner. I felt like I'd been slapped. What are you saying? She softened a little, but not much. I'm saying you need to trust me to run this business the way I see fit. Stop questioning me. Stop hovering. Just let me do what I do. She left the table, went into the bedroom, and closed the door. I sat there alone, with cold food and a cold feeling in my stomach. Something was wrong. Something had shifted, but I didn't know what to do about it. The next few weeks were tense. We barely talked. She was never home. When she was on her phone, always texting, always typing. Work stuff, she'd say if I asked. But one night, I saw the screen over her shoulder. The contact name was just M, and she was sending heart emojis. Who's M? I asked. She locked her phone quickly. What? I pointed at her phone. You were just texting someone named M. Who is that? She rolled her eyes. It's Maricel, my sister. Obviously. But I'd seen the messages. They didn't sound like sister messages. They sounded like something else. Can I see? I asked. She stared at me. Are you serious right now? You want to read my private messages? I felt stupid, but I pushed forward. You're sending hearts to someone named M. I just want to know who it is. She stood up. It's my sister, and even if it wasn't, it's none of your business. We're not married, Randall. I don't owe you an explanation for every person I talk to. She grabbed her purse. I'm going back to the cafe. Don't wait up. The door slammed behind her. I sat there in the empty apartment, staring at the wall, wondering when everything had gone so wrong. I tried calling Maricel the next day, just to check, just to see if Christine was telling the truth. The phone rang and rang. No answer. I tried again an hour later. Still nothing. Finally, on the third try, she picked up. Hello? Her voice was quiet, tentative. Maricel, it's Randall, Christine's boyfriend. Silence. Then, I know who you are. I didn't know what to say. I just wanted to check in, see how you're doing. Christine's been so busy, I feel like we haven't seen you in a while. More silence. Then she said, Mr. Randall, I can't talk to you. I'm sorry. She hung up. I tried calling back. The line was disconnected, or she'd blocked me. I couldn't tell which, but the message was clear. Whatever was happening, I was on the outside of it. I was the foreigner. the ATM, the old man who didn't understand, and I was starting to realize that maybe I never had. That night, Christine came home late again. I was still awake, sitting in the dark. "We need to talk," I said when she walked in. She sighed, this deep, exhausted sigh. "Randall, I'm tired." I stood up. "I don't care. We need to talk." She dropped her bag and crossed her arms. "Fine, talk." I didn't know where to start. What happened to us? We used to be happy. We used to talk, spend time together. Now I barely see you. When I do, you're distant. You won't let me see the books. You won't tell me who you're texting. What's going on? She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Maybe I made a mistake." My chest tightened. "What does that mean?" She looked at me, and her eyes were cold. "Maybe we moved too fast. Maybe I wasn't ready for this. For us." "You're saying you don't want to be with me?" I asked, my voice cracking. She shrugged. "I don't know what I want. I just know that right now, I feel suffocated. You're always asking questions, always wanting my attention, always needing something, and I can't give you what you need right now." I felt tears coming but fought them back. "I gave you everything, my savings, my house, my life. I moved across the world for you." She nodded. "I know, and I never asked you to do any of that. You did it on your own." That was the moment. That was when I should have left. Should have packed my bags and gone back to Detroit and cut my losses. But I didn't. Because I loved her. Because I'd given too much to walk away. Because I still believed that somewhere inside her the woman I'd fallen in love with was still there. "I'm sorry," I said. "I'll give you space. I'll stop asking questions. Just please, don't give up on us." She looked at me with something like pity. "Okay," she said. "Okay, I'll try." But I already knew. Deep down, I already knew it was over. I just wasn't ready to admit it yet. I was walking down the street in Parañaque one afternoon, just trying to clear my head. Christine had been gone since 6 that morning. I'd barely seen her in 3 days. I wasn't planning to go by the café, but I found myself walking that direction anyway, maybe hoping I'd see her through the window, maybe hoping she'd smile at me the way she used to. But when I turned the corner, I saw something that made my heart stop. A "for sale" sign in the window, right there on the glass, big red letters. I stood there for what felt like forever, just staring at it. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone. I called Christine. It rang 6 times. No answer. I called again and again. On the 4th try, she picked up. "What?" Her voice was flat, annoyed. "What is happening with the café?" I asked. "Why is there a "for sale" sign?" Silence. Long, terrible silence. Then she said, "I was going to tell you. My legs felt weak." "Tell me what?" She sighed. "I sold it, Randall. Someone made me an offer last week, a good offer. And I took it. I couldn't breathe." "You sold it? You sold our business?" She laughed, this short, bitter laugh. "Our business? Randall. It was never our business. It was mine. My name on the lease. My name on the permit. My name on the property." "That was my money," I was shouting now. People were staring. "I gave you over $100,000. I mortgaged my house. How could you sell it without telling me?" She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, in the coldest voice I'd ever heard from her, "It was never yours. The money was a gift. You gave it to me. What I do with my business is my decision." I felt like I was going to throw up. "Where's the money? The buyer must have paid you. Where's the money?" She hesitated. "It's tied up in investments, other opportunities. I'm growing my portfolio." I was shaking. "I want my money back. All of it. Right now." She laughed again. "That's not how this works. The money is invested. You'll get your share when things mature. But not now." I could barely speak. "When?" She paused. "I don't know. A few months. Maybe a year." I knew she was lying. I could hear it in her voice. "You spent it, didn't you?" "It's already gone." "I did what I needed to do," she said, "for my future, for my security. You're not going to be around forever, Randall. I have to think about myself." That hurt more than anything else she'd said. "I gave you everything. My voice cracked. I loved you. I believed in you. I know, she said, and I'm grateful. I really am. But this is business. This is survival. You'll understand eventually. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Where are you right now? I asked. I'm not telling you that, she said. Randall, we're done. I think it's better if you go back to America. There's nothing left for you here. Nothing left? I said. You're here. Our life is here. She was quiet. Then she said, very softly, I was never your life. I was a dream you bought, and now the dream is over. She hung up. I stood there, on the street, phone in my hand, people walking around me like I was invisible. I tried calling back, straight to voicemail. I called 10 more times. Voicemail every time. I sent messages. Please talk to me. We can work this out. I love you. No response. I walked to her apartment. Our apartment. The place I'd been living for almost a year. I used my key to get in. The door opened, but the apartment was different. Emptier. Her clothes were gone. Her laptop was gone. The small decorations she'd put up were gone. There was a note on the table. Randall, I'm sorry it had to be this way. You're a good man. You deserve someone better than me. Please don't try to find me. Take care of yourself. That was it. No signature. No goodbye. Just those few cold sentences. I sat down on the couch and I cried. Really cried. The kind of crying that comes from somewhere deep in your chest. The kind that makes you gasp for air. I cried for the money. I cried for the café. But mostly, I cried because I'd been so stupid, so blind, so desperate to be loved, that I'd ignored every warning sign. That night, I called Dale. It was morning in Detroit. He answered on the second ring. Randy? I couldn't speak at first. Just made these awful choking sounds. Randy, what's wrong? Talk to me. I told him everything. The sale, Christine leaving, the money gone. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. Come home, he finally said. Come back to Detroit, tonight, tomorrow, as soon as you can. I looked around the empty apartment. I don't have a home to come back to. I mortgaged it, remember? I'm making payments on a house in a city I don't even live in anymore. You'll stay with me, Dale said. Sharon and I have a spare room. You'll stay as long as you need to. I felt tears coming again. I'm 62 years old and I'm broke. How did this happen? Dale's voice was gentle. It happened because you wanted to believe. That's not a crime, Randy. That's just being human. The next day, I started trying to figure out my options. I found a lawyer, Attorney Ramos. His office was in Makati, small and cramped, and smelling like old paper. He was probably late 40s, professional, tired-looking. I told him everything. He listened, taking notes. When I finished, he put down his pen. Mr. Randall, I need to be honest with you. This is going to be very difficult. He pulled out the documents I'd brought. The business registration, the property deed, the lease, everything is in her name. You have no legal claim to any of this. But I paid for it, I said. I have bank records, wire transfers. It's all documented. He nodded. Yes, but legally, those were gifts. Unless you have a written agreement, a contract that says she would pay you back, or that you own part of the business, you have nothing. I felt sick. So she can just take everything? That's legal? He spread his hands. I'm afraid so. You can file a civil case. Try to prove that there was an implied contract or that she defrauded you. But Mr. Randall, these cases take years, and they're expensive. The legal fees alone could be more than what you'd recover, if you recover anything at all. So what do I do? I asked. He looked at me with genuine sympathy. You go home. You rebuild your life. You learn from this. I'm sorry I don't have better news. I left his office and walked through Makati for hours. Just walking, not going anywhere, just moving. I tried to find Christine. I went to Maricel's place, but no one answered. I went to her mother's house, the address Christine had shown me once. An older woman answered the door. I'm looking for Christine, I said. She looked at me blankly. No Christine here. She closed the door in my face. I tried to find Tito Ben. His number was disconnected. I went to City Hall, asked around. Ben who? They said. We have many Bens here. Nobody knew who I was talking about. He'd disappeared too. Maybe he'd never been real in the first place. I sat in a mall food court one afternoon, the same place Christine and I had eaten lunch a dozen times. I watched families eating together, couples holding hands, kids running around. Normal people, living normal lives. And I thought about how I'd ended up here, alone in a foreign country, broke, betrayed, old. I replayed every conversation, every moment, looking for the signs I'd missed, and they were all there. The way she'd never said, "I love you" first. The way she'd always kept the business in her name. The way Maricel had looked at me that day. The way Tito Ben had smiled when I said I was helping. The way Christine had become cold the moment the cafe was secured. I'd seen it all. I just hadn't wanted to believe it, because believing it would mean admitting that I was alone, that nobody really wanted me, that the love I'd felt was one-sided. And that truth was too painful to face, until I didn't have a choice anymore. I'm back in Detroit now. I've been staying on Dale's couch for 3 weeks. Sharon is nice about it. She makes extra food at dinner. She doesn't ask too many questions. But I can see it in their faces. The pity, the concern, the unspoken question. How did you let this happen? I don't have an answer. Or maybe I have too many answers. I was lonely. I was desperate. I was stupid. I wanted to matter to someone. I wanted to be loved. I wanted to believe that I still had something to offer. Pick one. They're all true. My house is gone. Not literally gone, but it's not mine anymore. The bank owns most of it now. I'm making payments on a mortgage for a place I don't live in, and the payments are eating through what little savings I have left. I called a real estate agent. Can I sell it? I asked. She looked at the numbers. You can, but after you pay off the mortgage and closing costs, you'll walk away with maybe $20,000 if you're lucky. $20,000. That's what 40 years of work comes down to. That's what I have to show for my entire adult life. I think about that a lot. About how I worked every day from the time I was 22 until I was 60. How I put money in my retirement account every paycheck. How I lived modestly. Didn't take fancy vacations. Didn't buy expensive cars. And now it's gone. All of it. Given to a woman who disappeared the moment she got what she wanted. My kids know. My daughter called last week. Dad, are you okay? She asked, her voice careful. I lied. I'm fine, honey. Just figuring some things out. She was quiet. Dale called me, told me what happened. I felt shame wash over me. I'm sorry. She sighed. Dad, you don't have to apologize. I just wish you'd talk to me before you did all this. Would you have stopped me? I asked. Probably not, she admitted. But I would have tried. She paused. Do you need money? That made it worse somehow. My 35-year-old daughter offering to help her broke father. No, I said. No, I'm okay. Another lie. My son hasn't called, but he sent a text. Sorry about the Philippines thing. That sucks. That's it. That's all I got. But that's my son. Never been much for emotional conversations. I texted back. Thanks, buddy. What else was there to say? I think about Christine every day. I can't help it. I wonder where she is, what she's doing with the money, if she thinks about me at all, if she feels guilty, if any of it was real. The worst part isn't the money. I mean, it is, but it isn't. The worst part is not knowing if she ever loved me. Was it all fake from the beginning? Did she see me on that app and think, here's a lonely old American with money? Or was there a moment, even just one moment, where she felt something real? I torture myself with these questions. Late at night, early in the morning, all day long. I replay the signs I ignored. The way she never wanted to talk about the future beyond the cafe. The way she pulled away after I gave her the money for the property. The way she'd get angry when I asked questions. The way Maricel wouldn't talk to me. The way Tito Ben looked at me like I was a mark. It's all so obvious now. Every single warning sign was there, flashing red, screaming at me. But I didn't want to see them, because seeing them would mean facing the truth that I was alone, that I was unwanted, that my money was worth more than I was. Dale tries to talk to me. Randy, you can't blame yourself forever. But I can. I do. Because I'm the one who ignored my friend's warnings. I'm the one who sent the money. I'm the one who mortgaged my house. I'm the one who believed that a 31-year-old woman could actually love a 62-year-old man who had nothing special to offer except a bank account. I wanted so badly to be needed, to matter, to be someone's hero. Christine made me feel that way. She'd look at me with those big eyes and tell me I was changing her life, that I was making her dreams come true, that nobody had ever believed in her the way I did. And I ate it up, every word, because I wanted it to be true more than I wanted to be smart. Sharon made coffee one morning and sat with me at the kitchen table. "How are you doing, Randall?" she asked. I shrugged, hanging in there. She put her hand on mine. "Dale told me what you said last night, about how you'd probably do it again. That scared me." I'd said that, in a moment of honesty I probably shouldn't have shared. I don't mean I'd go back to Christine. I just mean I'd probably fall for the same thing again. Because for those few months, I felt alive. I felt wanted. I felt like I mattered. Sharon squeezed my hand. "You do matter. You always have. But that's what people say, isn't it? It's what they're supposed to say. It doesn't make it true. The truth is, I'm 62 years old, sleeping on my friend's couch, with less money than I had when I was 30. The truth is, I gave everything to a woman who never loved me. The truth is, I'm probably going to die alone, and that terrifies me more than anything else. I applied for jobs last week, places that would hire someone my age, Walmart, Home Depot, maybe a security guard position. I need the money. I need to rebuild something. But sitting in those interviews, filling out those applications, I felt the weight of my entire life pressing down on me. This is what it comes to. This is where all those years of work lead. I don't hate Christine. That's the crazy part. I want to. God, I want to hate her so much, but I don't. I just miss her. I miss the version of her I thought I knew. The woman who laughed at my jokes, who held my hand walking down the street, who called me her hero. Even if that woman never really existed, I miss her. Sometimes I look at my phone hoping she'll call, that she'll say she's sorry, that she'll explain, that she'll tell me it was all a mistake or a misunderstanding or something that makes sense, but she never calls, and I know she never will, because to her, I was never a person. I was a resource, and once the resource was used up, there was no reason to stay in touch. I lie awake on Dale's couch at night, and I think about how different my life could have been if I hadn't downloaded that app, if I hadn't responded to her message, if I'd listened to Dale, if I'd been smarter, more careful, less desperate, all the little choices that led me here, to this moment, to this couch, to this life. But I can't go back. I can't undo it. I can only live with it, with the shame, with the loss, with the knowledge that I spent a year of my life and my life savings on a fantasy, that I paid $100,000 to feel loved for a few months. And the worst part? Some dark part of me whispers that it was almost worth it. That feeling wanted, even if it was fake, was better than the emptiness I'd been living with before. That's what scares me most. Not the money, not the humiliation, but the fact that even knowing everything I know now, part of me would still make the same choice. Because being used feels better than being invisible. And I spent so many years being invisible. It's been 4 months since I left the Philippines. 4 months of sleeping on Dale's couch. 4 months of filling out job applications. 4 months of avoiding mirrors because I can't stand to see the old man staring back at me. 4 months of surviving but not really living. I got a job at Home Depot. Part-time, minimum wage plus a little. I help people find paint and lumber and screws. Aisle 7? Sir. The hammers are in aisle 12. I'm 62 years old with a high school diploma and 40 years of experience in manufacturing operations, and I'm pointing people toward the right aisle in a hardware store. But the money helps. $300 a week, give or take. It's not enough to get my own place, but it's enough to contribute to Dale and Sharon's expenses. Enough to buy my own groceries. Enough to not feel like a complete burden. Sharon says I'm not a burden, but I see how she looks at me sometimes, like she's worried I might never leave. My kids came to visit last month, both of them, at the same time. I hadn't seen them together in years. We went to dinner at a chain restaurant, one of those places with too much on the menu and nothing that tastes quite right. It was awkward. My daughter kept trying to make conversation. My son kept looking at his phone, and I kept apologizing. "Dad, stop saying you're sorry," my daughter finally said. "We're not mad at you." My son looked up from his phone. "We're worried about you." That was the most he'd said all night. I didn't know what to say back. What could I say? That I was worried about me too? We talked about the house, whether I should sell it. My daughter thought I should. "Dad, you're never going back there. You might as well sell it and use that money to start over," my son agreed. "At least you'd have something." But I couldn't do it. Not yet. That house is the last piece of my old life. The life before Christine. The life where I was a person with a home and a future. Selling it feels like admitting that person is gone forever. I don't talk about Christine with them. They don't ask. But I can see the questions in their eyes. How could you be so stupid? How could you not see what was happening? How could you throw your whole life away? I have those same questions. I just don't have good answers. I think about her less now. Not because I want to, just because time does that, dulls the edges of everything. But sometimes, late at night, I still pull up her Instagram. She's still posting. The cafe is gone, but she's moved on to something else. Some kind of online boutique, selling clothes, I think. She looks happy, successful, like nothing ever happened, like I never existed. I never commented, never messaged. What would I even say? The woman who runs that account isn't the Christine I knew. Or maybe she is, and I just never really knew her at all. Dale and I were having beers on his back porch last weekend, just sitting there in the cold, not saying much. Finally, he asked, "Do you regret it?" I thought about that for a long time. "I regret losing my money," I said. "I regret losing my house. I regret being 62 and starting over from scratch." I took a drink. "But I don't regret feeling alive again, even if it was fake, even if it was stupid. For a few months, I felt like I mattered, and I haven't felt that way in a long time." Dale nodded. He didn't tell me I was wrong. He didn't tell me I was right. He just sat there with me, and that was enough. I don't hate Christine. I've tried. God knows I've tried. But hate requires energy, and I don't have much left. Mostly I just feel sad. Sad for what I lost. Sad for what I thought I had. Sad for the man I was who believed that love could be bought if you just paid the right price. I'm not the same person I was a year ago. That man was naive, hopeful, desperate enough to believe in fairy tales. This man, the one sitting here now, knows better. He knows that people will take everything you're willing to give. He knows that love isn't something you can buy, no matter how much you're willing to pay. He knows that sometimes the price of feeling alive is everything you own. Some days I'm okay. I wake up, go to work, come home, watch TV with Dale and Sharon. I eat dinner. I go to bed. It's a life. Not the life I imagined, but a life. Some days I'm not okay. I wake up and feel the weight of everything pressing down on me. The shame, the regret, the fear that this is all there is left. That I'll work at Home Depot until I'm too old to work anywhere and then I'll die and no one will remember that I was ever here. But I'm still here. That counts for something. I think about giving up sometimes. Not in a dramatic way. Just in the quiet way of letting yourself fade. But I don't. Because somewhere deep down, underneath all the pain and humiliation and loss, there's still a part of me that wants to keep going. That wants to see what happens next. That believes, against all evidence, that maybe there's still something good waiting for me. I don't know if I'll ever get my money back. I don't know if I'll ever have a home again. I don't know if I'll ever find love again, though I'm not sure I'm brave enough to try. What I do know is that I survived this. I gave a woman everything I had, and when she took it all and disappeared, I survived. I'm 62 years old. I have almost nothing. I sleep on my friend's couch. I work part-time at a hardware store. I'm lonely. I'm scared. I'm ashamed. But I'm still here. And some days, that's enough. Maybe tomorrow will be one of the good days. Maybe it won't, but I'll wake up either way. I'll go to work. I'll point people toward the right aisle. I'll come home. I'll survive. 'Cause that's what I do now. I survive. And maybe, somewhere down the road, surviving will start to feel like living again. Maybe I'll meet someone who sees me as more than a bank account. Maybe I'll rebuild something that matters. Maybe I'll even forgive myself for being human enough to want love and stupid enough to believe I'd found it. Or maybe I won't. Maybe this is it. Maybe this is what the rest of my life looks like, working until I can't anymore, living in other people's spaces, being the cautionary tale people tell their friends. Don't be like Randall. Don't be that guy. But even if that's all I am now, even if that's all I'll ever be, I learned something. I learned that love isn't something you buy. I learned that need and love aren't the same thing. I learned that being alone is better than being used. I learned that I'm stronger than I thought, even if I'm not as strong as I wish I was. Christine took my money. She took my house. She took my pride. But she didn't take everything. She didn't take the part of me that got up this morning, the part that went to work, the part that's still trying, still breathing, still here. I don't know if that's victory or just survival, but right now it's all I've got, and for today it's enough.